Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Planning Commission for August 17th. First order of business is to call the roll. Commissioner Ousley is absent. Commissioner Manchella is here. Commissioner Scott Berman,
Here.
Commissioner Franklin,
Here.
Commissioner Gupta,
Here.
Commissioner Netanyahu,
Here.
and welcome back from me being a new mother. Jeff Berman,
Here.
Commissioner Matei, I'll leave that blank, and I'm here. So we do have a quorum. First order of business is to ratify the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a
There's no minutes.
proposed, no minutes?
No minutes. They're not ready yet.
No minutes to ratify.
Here I was already in motion to do it.
Get the motion. Okay, very good. First case we have tonight is case 2023-20P. Is the petitioner here tonight?
Yes.
Please come up to the podium. Would you give us your name and your address, please?
Mike Judah.
Would you please speak into the microphone?
Mike Judah. I'm at 8010 Kirkcaldy Court in Palos Heights,
Okay,
Illinois,
thank you.
604.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you affirm that the testimony tonight you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to help you?
Yes.
Okay. Counselor, how was their notice?
To my understanding, it wasn't sent, and I believe the petitioner is going to be asking for a continuance.
Correct.
Okay. We've discussed this, and we're gonna continue your case till September 7th. Do you think you'll be able to get your notice in order by then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I understand that, Planning Director Nayland, do you have something to add about this case?
So the village manager is gonna move forward with a pilot for this location to allow you to assemble your patio. But under, because you're not officially approved, you should not make any permanent changes to the site. But placement of tables and chairs and trash receptacles is acceptable on a short-term basis.
Understood.
All right, you'll be able to do this up until the meeting,
Okay.
September 7th, okay?
Awesome. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
You're welcome. All
You'd
right,
have to send the notice, it looks by next week Wednesday, just so you know.
I'm sorry?
You'd have to send the notice by
By
next week Wednesday.
Awesome.
if you have any other questions, just,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
No.
Shoot for tomorrow.
yeah, just keep in contact with the staff. They'll
Absolutely.
they'll guide you through this,
Awesome.
okay?
For
All right,
sure.
thank you. and
All right.
good luck
Thank
to
you. Everyone's been helpful.
Okay. Next case tonight is case, two village cases. Case 2023-19P, zoning chapter amendment, and, 2023-18P zoning chapter amendment, and 19P, another zoning chapter amendment. In 18P, the Village of Skokie is requesting an amendment to chapter 118, the zoning article 11, off-street parking and loading facilities, to prohibit new curb cuts and front yard driveways on lots that abut or have access to a public improved alley. And, Paul, what do you have to add?
Thank you, all. Paul Reese from the Planning Department staff. I have to add that this is kind of a outcome of the sustainability work that the board and the Planning Commission has undertaken over the last year, 18 months. That and coupled with improving our pedestrian quality across the village, which we'll also get into in the next in the next case. We'd like to propose these handful of changes, 4 different changes to the zoning chapter to not allow any driveways, any new driveways if your property, residential property, has a public alley. There are 4 main points that we'd like to talk about. So the first is that stormwater reduction into the combined sewer system. Engineering is always looking for ways to reduce the stormwater draining to the sewer system. More driveways and hardscape from the aprons and lead to more runoff into the sewer systems. Anytime that we can lessen those driveways will only help in that. It will only help keep water out of the system and out of your basements. The second point is pedestrian friendly environment. Public Works has been installing sidewalks over the last couple of years. They plan to do 4 to 6 blocks per year for the next handful of years. And then prohibiting driveways from the street on lots that abut the alley. This will help a more pedestrian friendly environment. The more walkable and pedestrian friendly an area is, the greater likelihood that kids will be out and able to play on the street a little bit more safely. People can walk to their neighbors, can walk to the store, can walk to work or the train. The third main point is loss of green space in front yard parkway trees. Village staff estimates that more than 10 mature front yard or parkway trees have been lost over the last several years because of new front yard driveways. And the loss of the green parkway space was part of a contributor to the stormwater runoff. When the aprons get installed in the parkways, this leads to less green space, less permeable space, as I mentioned. And then finally, number 4, the loss of on-street parking spaces. So another one of the negative side effects of allowing new curb cuts and new driveways on a residential street is the loss of the on-street parking. The convenience the driveway provides to one property owner results in the loss of 1 or sometimes 2 on-street parking spaces. On blocks that have more homes, this leads to more guests looking for a constrained number of parking spaces. Just wanted to point out that on properties that do not abut a public alley, a driveway accessible from the street will still be permitted, and the ordinance will always allow for a property owner to provide for on-street parking. So therefore, staff recommends that Chapter 18 of the zoning code of Village of Skokie be amended as outlined in the staff report.
Okay. Paul, I would have just a question. So you're talking about a piece of property that abuts a public alleyway,
Correct.
okay? Now, let's say the lot size is, let's say 60 feet wide. Is he able to put the driveway on the opposite end of the property, away from the alley?
What do you mean by opposite? Do you mean the
Well,
street
you're
frontage?
are you talking about a driveway that abuts right up to the alley?
No, I mean a property that abuts an alley. So if your property has an alley,
Yeah, a side, yeah.
has an alley, we're proposing not allowing a driveway on the street side.
Okay, so my thinking is that on properties that have no back alleys,
Right,
let's
then
say-
obviously you would be allowed a driveway from the
or
front.
would he need to put the driveway off the alley on the side of the house?
So
I
I think
don't-
another way to put this is to say houses that are served by an alley. So
Yeah.
alleys, homes that the back of the property line has an alley, or even maybe the side of the property, if it is a side alley, then we would ask that this ordinance would require them to use the alley, because we service the alley, we can centralize vehicles, or pedestrians expect cars in alleys. They don't always expect cars on sidewalks, especially small children who aren't prepared for pedestrian conflicts. So if you are in a block that does not have an alley, which is much of Skokie does not have alleys, you would still be able to provide for a driveway, and most of those properties do already have driveways.
Okay,
I have one question.
yes.
See, in the snow winter, right, alleys are not cleaned like streets.
Sure.
And it will be some time, if you don't clean the alley, the people will stuck and
Sure.
they will not be able to use
So
their
so we talked,
driveway. It's difficult for them unless you change your cleaning services for the alleys also. Otherwise, it will be difficult for the people who use the alley to park their car in their garage.
so
I have this
the village
many
does
times.
plow, yeah.
I have this many times car is stuck because alleys are not clean. And so we need to address that too.
So we can bring that to the Public Works Department and address that, but one of the things that Public Works has observed is often people, when they clear their driveways, they push the snow right into the public streets, so that it creates an additional hazard on the street as well with the driveway snow, and so snow is very difficult no matter how you slice it. There's no way to get around that. The winter is very challenging in the Midwest sometimes.
I have two
Yeah.
questions.
Yes,
They both relate to new construction and tear downs. So the first is easy, I think. If a developer is tearing down an existing property with a street access driveway, that is allowed to continue, where you're not ordering that tear down developer to eliminate that driveway that previously existed?
if the driveway exists, it'll stay.
Driveway exists,
Yeah.
but the house is a tear down.
I don't
Now
think we would
rebuild
allow an
this.
expansion of the driveway.
We would not allow, but we allow that driveway and the new house to be built with a attached garage,
Right.
presumably accessed by that driveway.
Yes.
I think I'm not sure that we've addressed that correctly then in the ordinance that we're writing. Because it says, it makes it a proclamation that all that have alleys adjacent will be then, in number 6.
Well, it says no new curb cuts.
That's a prohibited.
That would
No,
not be
no,
a,
I'm looking at location.
oh, okay.
Access to off-street parking can only be from a public alley. Curb cuts are prohibited unless the lot does not abut a public improved alley. Relief may only be granted for mixed-use business or industrial properties.
I would insert
It's
the
this-
word new in there.
I would also, what do you,
What
what do you think, Joanne? Or, well,
I-
that seems to be the spot where we need to address my concern.
Yeah, just add the
Okay,
word new.
Before curb cut?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Great.
No new curb cut.
And then the other question is piggybacking on my other commissioner's question. It's not just about snow, but some of our alleys are improved much better and much worse than others. An improved alley is a great thing, and that's fine, and that's what we should order access to the garages from. But an unimproved alley in the village can be quite a bad alley. They are badly rutted, they are badly gravelled. So it's not that I like this ordinance, by the way, and I do think that we should eliminate street curb cuts and we should push cars to the alleys. But it's not just a random question for the Public Works people. It is I think something we have to determine, that we cannot pass this unless the Public Works says that it will improve alleys to a minimum standard such that
Well,
travel is accessible.
See, another question is, in winter, if one car is stuck in the alley, there is no way for them to get out. And
I mean,
if one car is stuck in the alley, there is no. In the street, if the car is stuck, it is, you
Right.
can get.
I don't think
through.
this proposal changes that fact
No,
either
there's
way, like a
nothing
car
that's
could be
gonna
stuck.
change that.
Well,
yeah.
except that if we were to say that our passage of this is conditioned upon Public Works reviewing all of the alleys in Skokie and determining that they are all accessible. Accessible is good enough. If they are accessible, if they're accessible, that would satisfy me. But I think upon review, they will find that, I don't know,
Well,
I'm guessing
I
10 to
think you're
20%
putting,
of the.
putting an extra burden on the village.
I
to
am.
do that.
Perhaps-
No, I definitely am.
I
I'm
don't-
saying that I think that 10 to 20% of our alleys are not open access, open public access alleys. I think that, and so we're being asked to pass something that says, let's push all the cars to the alleys, while knowing, taking judicial notice of the fact that there are some alleys that are not accessible.
Well, I think we, I
I'd
mean,
like to-
I think we have, if there are vehicles that are driving down them today,
Right.
utilizing garages, we're aware of some of their conditions, and so we are able to perform service in terms of regrading and other things. There's ability for the residents to communicate that if their alley is not undrivable. So I am, if you would like, we can include, as this travels to the board at some point, a correspondence from Public Works that indicates additional information that, of how we treat and maintain our alleys.
Good, I'd like that,
Okay.
so that the board knows that we like this in concept, but we want to make sure that all of our alleys are accessible.
Okay.
I have an issue with one of the arguments on this, and that is that the driveway takes up
Erica, would you just tip your microphone down a little bit? Thank you.
that the driveway takes up parking spaces, but if you have a driveway, you are then not using parking spaces because you are in the driveway. And so you're actually often freeing up parking spaces that might otherwise be taken by the fact that you don't have a driveway.
Sure, but let's assume a block is 100 feet long. It's got 100 feet of parking. If you and I both live on that street and we both put a curb cut in for our new driveway at our new house, then that's 20 plus 20, maybe 50, 40, maybe 50 feet of curb space that's not accessible for
Okay,
public
but each of those
parking.
driveways are now taking 2 cars.
Sure,
off
for a
of the
private
street.
use, like the driveways are a private use where we're talking about the public way.
Granted, but now the public has those spaces that otherwise would be occupied by the homeowners.
I mean, the homeowners would have access up the alley to their garage or a parking pad.
He may not have garage in the back.
So the other characteristic of these driveways is, we often observe people utilize their one car garage for storage. So we observe a lot of that from a property standards perspective when we go out and do inspections and other space. So often what we'll see is those parking spaces, that apron, the section between the sidewalk and the garage is often taken up by a vehicle. I live in a neighborhood that doesn't have alleys. I observe it pretty regularly that people are not using their garage. They park on the section between the sidewalk or the street. So we've included some pictures like this. We also, people will guess sometimes that space between the sidewalk and the home is not a full car length. There's sections that have smaller front yards. So you have people who sort of think they can fit in the space, but they really can't. And so it creates a further detriment to the sidewalk. So that's one challenge that we've observed, and our inspectors can attest to that when they visit sites, they certainly notice that the garage is often used as extra storage space.
See, what you are showing is not happened all the time.
No, sure,
It happens
these are-
occasionally.
Sure.
And this can happen, like the first truck you are showing it is the delivery truck. This guy will be gone in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's it, okay? The other one, there is enough room, but he could have moved the car, right? But see, this is not a good example. This is a very short time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's all the time cars are parked like this, but
There's another picture, flip to the other pictures, the next 3, 4. So that's probably more characteristic, that white, what you see, the white vehicle parking there.
right. And this is just kind of showing the pedestrian experience as you traverse down this sidewalk and cross.
See,
3
even
or 4.
pedestrian experiences, the village is not cutting the trees because these trees are hanging on the sidewalk, and even on my street, I have difficult time to pass because the trees, they are not cutting the trees.
So, I have a question.
Right.
We're talking an incredibly limited set of circumstances
Sure.
because our housing stock is old and established. We've just agreed that you're grandfathered in if you tear down your house, if you already have curb cuts. So, if this is better for water retention and not putting it into the sewer system, and we're talking about a very limited set of circumstances where it's even gonna come up, and the alleys work, we've owned our house now for 34 years, we live on an alley, it works, it's fine, it's not improved. Sure, we gotta get out and shovel sometimes, but it works. So, we could debate it all night, but at the end of the day, how many times in the last few years has anybody requested to build a new house where they're gonna put curb cuts for a driveway where is someone gonna build a new house in Skokie to make curb cuts for a driveway?
And they're only,
But tear down's okay.
No,
But if it were to tear down in
without
this,
cur-
like in this
without a
photo here.
current.
Well, the old owner was surviving with the alley, so.
It's great, I agree. I like them going to the alley even with the tear down.
Right.
On my street of Keeler, 20 years ago, when there was a series of tear downs, those new tear down people then created new curb cuts, which did make for a much less pedestrian-friendly street.
Yes.
In that 9700 block of Keeler.
Yep.
And so that was a time when there were a lot of tear downs, so it could be that time again where that will happen again. And I like this for that, to push those new developers into the alley.
And we
Are
all
we-
know that people park across the, when they have multiple cars, they have a party on a Saturday night, they park across the sidewalks, they wash their cars across the sidewalks, that, it's just, so, how often is this gonna happen? That-
And this is only for houses that abut
Have
an
an
alley.
Correct.
Right,
This
Yeah.
And
is-
also, are we assuming that all of these houses have garages on their alley? Like, is that the assumption? That all of the people
No,
are
not really.
parking?
I would say that
Or
all
that
the
they have
houses.
parking available in the alley?
I would say that if you don't have a driveway to the front of your house, you have some sort of parking available off the alley.
either.
Is
Either
that,
there's
that's,
spot or a
that's
garage.
100% across the board?
I wouldn't say 100%, but
Now, look about
Okay,
where-
but so
where
for
the-
those
where the
people
garage-
that
yeah, where-
don't fit into that category, the 3%, let's say, do they have no opportunity to then build themselves a garage if they so choose?
they could build a garage off the alley.
Off
Absolutely.
the alley?
Yeah, it can.
Okay.
Yeah.
But none of the pictures that you showed us are exemplary of the kind of concerns that we're talking about today. Because none of the pictures that you showed us are off of alleys. I have an alley alongside of it. Unless I'm missing.
No. The alley would be to the rear of these buildings. Like these houses in the photos, the alley would be to the rear.
I'm talking about the change in the zoning.
Mm-hmm.
If the curb cuts are only for houses that abut an alley as opposed to having alleys behind it,
Sorry, again, I think that terminology is a little bit cumbersome.
okay?
It means your house is served by an alley, in the rear or the side.
That's what I
Yeah.
understood to begin with, but I thought that there was some discussion about it only pertained to houses that abutted an alley on its side.
The language just was meant to, and this is from the zoning administrator, but the language was just meant to express if your house property is touching an alley.
Right, not house, but property.
Property.
That's the difference.
So just to clarify, is that if your house abuts an alley, and now you wanna put a driveway in front, you'll be precluded from doing that, whereas
That is
before
correct.
you might not have.
Yes, but you, Jeff, said house and you meant property.
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 Yeah.
All right, and the other scenario is if your property does not abut an alley, and you wanna put a curb cut in for a driveway, then it will probably be permissible.
Go under the normal review process.
Right.
Okay.
So it only applies to those properties that have an alley running proximate to them, and that they would wanna put a driveway in front. And I don't know that that's.
And they didn't have one previously.
And they didn't have one previously.
Or they have one and they want to expand it?
Right.
Right, if they can't expand it. I'd like to make a motion, we accept the report as presented.
With the amendment,
With the
though,
amendment
that
of
we write the word new in
new.
where it previously didn't exist.
Okay.
So, if you make that motion,
I'll make
second.
that motion that we accept the staff's report as presented with the addition of new curb cuts then
To the body of the language.
to the body of the language.
Got it.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. That was Jeff and Scott. Call for the vote. Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman,
I, with one comment that I would like to pass to Paul and Johanna to take to the board,
yes.
that they review our alley situation throughout the village in light of this to determine that they are up to.
Okay, I'm not gonna put that in the motion.
No, it's not part of the motion, it's a comment that I know that they've heard and they will,
Let's just improve all the alleys.
that's right, that's what I'd like to do. That's not financially feasible. Done.
Scott's got deep pockets. Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta, Commissioner Giordano,
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner, me, and I'll approve that. So, motion approves. All right, next case is case, 2023-19P, and that is the Village of Skokie is requesting an amendment to Chapter 118, zoning Article 11, off-street parking and loading facilities. Oh, no, that was, I'm reading the wrong one, I'm sorry, I apologize. Oh, here it is. The Village of Skokie is requesting an amendment to Section 118 of the Skokie Village Code to modify provisions for drive-through facilities. And we're talking about facilities, everything, banks, food, drugs, Walgreens, CVS. Paul?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so as mentioned, this case 2023-19P, this is following up our conversation that we had earlier in the year in April. And we've made some refinements to the recommendations. I think I'll start with some of the non-code proposals that we're making. These are just kind of policy changes that we'd like to implement and that we talked about previously and didn't get a lot of pushback on, but I just want to read them into the report. So the first would be to require a plan on record with the village that addresses how operations are managed and to reduce the queuing of the line in order to better understand how restaurant will operationally handle long lines of cars and how it will mitigate this issue. Second, to prohibit deliveries during peak usage times as part of that plan. And then also to require that mobile ordering be part of the business model of approved special uses. So if customers can order ahead of time through the mobile apps and phones, we'll reduce order times between the order window and the pay window at the business, and also might discourage folks from going through the drive-through at all and actually get out of their car and go inside. And then the last would be to require that drive-through restaurants offer composting and recycling, in addition to their normal waste hauling efforts, both kitchen waste and dining room waste. So moving on to the code changes. There are 5. The first of which is to adopt specific language that defines drive-through facility. That's included on page 3. The second is to require drive-throughs to be screened from the street and should be placed behind buildings whenever possible. And then the third is to remove food-related drive-throughs as an allowed use from the mixed-use districts, that's NX, TX, and CX, to reduce the negative cumulative impacts that restaurant drive-throughs have in pedestrian-oriented areas. Next is to reduce the parking requirement at drive-through establishments from 1 parking space for each 100 square feet of net floor area to 1 space per 150 square feet of net floor area. And then finally, a requirement that no mature healthy trees can be removed to accommodate a drive-through as viewed by our forester, and that every 100 trips generated by a drive-through, per the traffic impact analysis, 1 new tree must be planted on site, or a fee in lieu shall be paid to the village to offset emissions from the drive-through activities. Is there questions about any of those in general? We can dive into the text.
I think it's great. I just have a question. Is 100 car trips practical, or what's the definition of a car trip? Because that could be a week, a new tree a week.
Usually the traffic report will lay out in kind of standard language the auto trips generated per day. For fast food and the ones that I've reviewed lately, it's between 500 and 1,000 per day.
So this is one.
So it would be
5 new trees every day?
5 new trees total for the project if it was 500 trips a day.
So this is an average total for what's projected for the project,
Correct.
not every time a meter goes off.
No.
at 100,
When
they
we
have to
when
plan
we
it.
when we review the special
Yeah.
use application and the traffic study that comes with it, we'll use that to kind of gauge how many auto trips they are predicting to be generated, And then we'll use that to kind of key in on how many trees that we,
I thought we were gonna
we'd
become a
ask.
new national forest.
No,
That's
I
what
mean,
I'm
it would
excited about.
it would get big pretty quick, yeah.
The language, the draft language right now does not say daily, so if that was an amendment that somebody wanted to make, on page 14 and 15 of the packet.
Paul, are you aware of the, was it the Chipotle restaurant on Tui? That's basically just a drive-through pickup. I believe they order online. Is that still operating? And how many cars are they moving through there?
I don't have that info on hand. I'm not entirely sure. That was before my time, that approval.
Okay.
But they would have to pay for 5 trees
Well, that's,
at the time of.
their grandfather, didn't
No, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
saying,
at
if
the
they were
time of
coming before us
Yeah.
today.
Okay,
Because they couldn't put them in that parking lot
Right.
presumably
yeah.
and operate the
But
restaurant.
their operation is strictly, there's no dining in, and supposedly you,
Yeah.
they expect you to order online and you go and pick it up.
Yeah, it's kind of a new model. It's-
Yeah.
That is a new model that we're seeing a little bit.
And I think we were questioning, well, what if somebody drives in the line and wants to order something? I guess they're directed to park on the side there and go
And use
to
the
their app and order and get back in the queue.
Right.
I think that's one end of the spectrum. I don't think that most places, at least the ones that I've seen applications come through, have been quite to that extent. We've raised the point of a lot of these topics with applicants if they've come in. They all say that they, Dunkin' Donuts, et cetera, they all have an app. They all say that that's part of their business model. We just want to kind of enumerate that and put it into the code.
Okay.
I have a comment and a question. First, I saw that we took out the word behind, but where previously we had said something about drive-through shall appear behind.
Yeah.
And that language I don't see any longer. Is that right, Paul?
So, the gist of it is, we're looking to screen the drive-throughs in different, in any way that we can, right? And so, we already review current applications to screen them. I'm gonna grab a water.
That's okay, take your time. But as you're grabbing it, the discussion last time was the word behind, and that's what we're gonna talk about now, I hope, and then screening in a moment, but behind is a subjective term because it depends on which way the building faces and where the street is and where the customer can see it. Now, after your drink, that's the long
Sure,
explanation behind.
yes, behind was a little subjective, so, and also, almost every drive-through is along at least 2, a lot of times 3 sides of a building. So yes, the goal is to screen it from the public way in an appropriate way, usually with vegetation. Yes, and the other thing that came up at their last discussion in April was, I can't remember the terminology exactly, but it was like not visible from the street. And so we kind of changed that language, tweaked it a little bit, just to
So
say
we
screen.
took away behind and we took away not
Yeah.
visible, but now my only concern is where we say, shall be screened. You say it in one paragraph on page 5, and then again, on page 6, the shall be seems a little, it shall be wherever possible. Will you have the offset for buying trees if you can't screen with trees, but for example, in this recent Dunkin' Donuts, that's the one I keep bringing up, that we just passed a couple of months ago on Dempster, where their entire lot plan was based on moving cars across what I would consider the front of the building.
Sure.
Because that was the only way they
Yeah,
could.
both street
fit-
frontages
They could
actually, yeah.
fit the street, the building, and the parking lot all together, and the access off the alley. So, and I don't think there was any way to screen it, even if they came in if they came in after we had passed this. So what do we do? Would we say shall? Would we not approve that? Or would we say, I'm suggesting shall wherever possible, screen? Tell us how we would have voted on that one if this were in effect and it was.
I would like to push these applicants and developers into coming forward with site plans that better fit the site. And so a lot of times we're kind of making trade-offs in a lot of different ways on a particular site, but I would like them to come in with a better site that fits that particular site and is screened as you know, like part of our job as planners is to kind of you know, look at those in between cases and make a judgment call in the best efforts of the village. So yes, I would say that we would probably have a stricter review of cases like
So you'd
that.
like us to help you by passing this so
That
that
is
you then
correct.
could have the extra push on the developer to rearrange
Yeah,
this.
and we do those kind of analysis already. When there's a drive-through case now, we look and we try to screen it as best we can. We don't have the teeth to say it shall be. And I don't think that we would ever say, like, that's part of the reason why I think we toned down the language, like, not visible from the street, because that's a pretty impossible scale. And so I like screening better. It
I
kind
do
of
too.
gets the point. It allows you to put vegetation and trees and shrubbery and what have you.
But you do like the harsher standard of shall be screened from the public way than wherever possible.
Doesn't say entirely.
Yeah, so that's the other point, right? Like, I don't think it can be entirely. You'll never, like, anything you would build that would screen it entirely would be just as obtrusive as the
Right.
drive-through itself, right? So
Okay. I understand.
you have to trust a little bit of judgment on that.
No, I
guess.
want the village staff to have that power, and it sounds like a good thing.
Just don't let it go to your head. Okay. Any further discussions, comments, questions?
I move adoption of 2023-19P as presented.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Gupta. Any more comments?
I did have a question.
Cindy, go ahead.
So I understand the screening, the visibility, all of this that we were just discussing. But I thought one of the sticking points we had in our last discussion had to do with the compost and recycling requirement, and we didn't really discuss that today. Or did I miss a meeting where we discussed it more thoroughly?
I think we discussed.
We didn't discuss it, no.
Yeah.
No, you're
Well,
right.
we discussed it, but I didn't think we finished the discussion
Oh,
on that.
previous time?
That's my recollection,
Mhm.
but perhaps.
All we're suggesting that the terminology is a little awkward again. We're requiring them to offer. We can't make anyone compost, especially in the restaurant, the seating area. So we're just suggesting that become part of their overall, like, waste hauling, waste management plan. So you have to get your garbage out, you have to get your recycling out, you have to get your food scraps out.
So I guess that's where I need to understand it, because right now, the village has done a wonderful job of having the composting
Mhm.
barrels out here at some of the parks.
Mhm.
It's available to people. But I would venture to guess that the majority of Skokie, not judgmentally, because I'm just figuring this out myself, aren't educated on composting necessarily. And people coming from outside of Skokie, perhaps even less so.
Mhm.
So I need to understand the onus is on the restaurant
Management,
owner
yeah.
to provide like our receptacles outside
Mhm.
here. They're required to have such a receptacle. They are required to compost their own waste,
Yes.
and then because.
Yes, I mean, the same way that they're required to haul their garbage out, or pay someone to haul their garbage out.
Right, I'm thinking of the consumer as well.
The consumer would see.
Many people don't even bother to recycle, which is
I mean, and like I-
frustrating.
right, and that's why we're only mentioning offer. So,
Yeah.
as a
And then do they
consumer,
have
I'll
to-
finish my meal, I'll go up to the little garbage bin, it'll have a garbage one, it'll have a recycling one, and it'll have a composting one, for example.
But what happens when they don't have control over the customers putting things in the wrong
It'll
receptacle?
be a mess, yeah, absolutely, and there's no way, I don't think, for us to, like, legislate that, yeah.
That's what happens today. They
Sure.
throw everything in the wrong place, the wrong bin.
But that's
They don't
just
even look.
recycling
Right.
and
Baby steps,
waste, so
right?
now we're adding
Yeah.
We're offering,
composting.
we're giving the chance for people to do the right thing.
So
So-
if a couple percentage points of it get done right, then we're ahead. Otherwise, it was gonna go into the wrong bin anyway, probably.
There's also, you go to restaurants, some fast casual restaurants, they're starting to offer this. Maybe not so much here, but in other parts of the country, it's a pretty normal occurrence to see landfill recycling organics. And people are learning to do it. Major cities in the West Coast are offering it.
Yeah.
I would.
We're requiring it.
They're requiring it, right?
All
And-
businesses in Seattle have to.
and residents in LA have to do. I mean, there's a pattern here. We may be years behind it but it's gonna get to us at some point. We're gonna have to, and the village has, the voluntary programs already, and I was trying to find the data, but the village alone on this voluntary basis has done an extraordinary effort to divert that waste. I mean, we're talking tons and tons of things that aren't going to landfills, and it's very, very impressive. The compost bins have done phenomenally. We've added more locations, so we're really, it's been a great partnership with the Park District and those locations, and trying to continue to build that and build the household recycling and composting.
I think I'm not opposed at all. I think maybe what I'm saying is the education is missing. We're putting up compost barrels at McDonald's, but there's no education, I guess, to go along with that. The community isn't educated. I was just educated not too long ago by one of my neighbors, and I'm good to go. But that's a one-on-one, and other
Sure.
than the sustainability
But that's exponential if you tell
committee
someone,
or-
then everyone.
No, absolutely. I'm not opposing it. I guess I'm just trying to understand it exactly, who is the onus on? And are we, as the Village of Skokie, perhaps as the Sustainability Commission, whomever, is there a major push for composting education like there was with recycling?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Public Works, but I do know that part of the sustainability goals and objectives is absolutely some of that educational piece that you're talking about.
Okay,
Mandatory composting, it's my understanding, is not in this,
no.
in these zoning changes that we are
No,
No.
passing
no.
tonight, right? So
No.
it's not, it's an important discussion, but not.
yeah, but it's not here,
specific to
that'd be
this motion.
difficult to enforce, right, currently.
One more comment on
Sure.
composting, whether it's mandatory or not, in this zoning ordinance or not. The village would have to rearrange and probably should think about rearranging its waste hauling. Right now, we have a city mandated waste hauler that hauls our waste as a food person in the in the village of Skokie. I know that they don't have composting as part of their waste hauling.
Yeah.
So
Good point.
the two don't work together. We can't both strongly suggest to restaurants that they compost, whether it's consumer-based or restaurant kitchen-based, and then simultaneously say, you must use this waste hauler, and they don't have a composting pickup. The two don't work together.
Agreed.
Okay,
Anyway, back to my,
all right,
it was motion and second.
all right, it's been seconded, I'm gonna call for the vote. Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta,
Aye.
Commissioner Giovannahu,
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Any other business before the commission? None? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Cindy won't be here.
I have a
What's on the
conflict
seventh?
once
Main
every 4
Street
weeks.
people talking
Once
about
every
tearing
four
it
meetings,
down and
yeah.
turning it into
Okay.
66
And it's because,
down
it's
44
because
68.
of,
68. So,
the
and they're
tenants.
not, and
I
I don't
can't
blame them,
get
they're
back
not
from my
happy,
downtown